Hello, and welcome to eCom Insights, the podcast where we give you data-led tips to optimize your profits online.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to eCom Insights with me. I'm Matt Anderson.
And me, Rael.
On today's episode, we're joined here by the wonderful Georgina Leybourne, an incredible entrepreneur, which we'll find out more later, and also CMO of Linnworks and valued partner of Optimizons. Georgia's knowledge of the e-commerce industry is outstanding, with a life story to match. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Matt. Good to see you, Rael. I'm delighted to be here. And thank you very much for inviting me.
No, you're most welcome.
So let's kick things off with giving our listeners a bit of a breakdown of who you are. And you've definitely got a colourful background, so please do indulge.
Do you know, it's always quite daunting to be invited on one of these things and to be called, you know, this sensational person. It's like scary because I'm actually very, very normal. I do have a bit of a colourful background. And yes, I have been known to call myself an entrepreneur in the past. I often call myself an accidentalpreneur because I'm not too sure quite how it all happened. But I am definitely one of those people who everything that I've been through, every decision that I've made, every path that I've trodden has got me to where I am today, which is the chief marketing officer of a very healthy, fast-growing technology company that is helping retailers to sensationalize their operations and really get them going on marketplace and online retail.
Great. And I know you grew up in New York on the other side of the pond and returned back here to the UK for boarding school. I mean, how did that shape your career path, if so?
So would you believe I did live in America for 10 years. I went to American high school. I survived American high school. At one stage, I had a very strong American accent, But I've managed to replace that with my dulcet British tones.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But basically, my father was in the broadcast industry. We were a typical nuclear family. He went over to the States originally in the early 70s for the space program.
Oh, wow.
He was a camera technician down in Cape Canaveral for all of the space elements down there. And then we came back to the UK, and then we went back to the US when I was in my early teens. And he was working at the NBC in Rockefeller Center in New York City. We were out in the sticks. We actually lived in Chappaqua, which is where the Clintons now live.
Yes.
We were there first. It's official. So yes, big childhood growing up in the States, out of your comfort zone from a cultural perspective, but learning how to work with Americans, which I think has been very important in later life. I've spent quite a lot of my career working for American companies or Americans.
And you're someone of many, many talents, including French. Tu parles français, which is chapeau.
Oui. Je parle français, c'est vrai. Yes, I lived in France for a couple of years as well in my early career. I do remember, I've got some fond memories, Matt. During my placement year at university, I went to work for a small accountancy firm. And they gave me this magazine to read, like this company brochure to read. And I'm reading through it and I'm like, I don't know what any of this means. And I had to go home that night and get out the dictionary, and look up abonnement to find out that they were subscriptions. It was a scary time, but very, very, very useful to live there, work there, and really get under the skin of the French and the language.
Very colourful background. I love it. And it probably speaks to a little bit of sort of career choices, career progression in line of work and all those sorts of things, right?
Yes, but very accidental. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was growing up. I wanted to be a Charlie's Angel and go into be a private detective or
yes,
a air stewardess or something, glamorous. Farrah Fawcett Majors was like my, idol. So I came out of university and slotted into a customer service role originally, then went into pre-sales, then eventually went into marketing. And I went into marketing because I thought selling would be so much easier if somebody would actually do the marketing properly. So I went backwards and got into the marketing side.
Those arguments are still very much live today.
It's true. It's true. Lots of history in customer service, project management, sales, business development, partner alliances, marketing, the whole bang shoot, which is really, I guess, where I've now sort of come to the pinnacle. I think it's the pinnacle of my career. I don't know where else I'd go from here, but we'll see. I'll let you know in a couple of years' time.
Yes.
But yeah, putting it all together to try and get the go-to-market strategy right for Linnworks.
So I guess where did this sort of entrepreneur tendency or opportunities come up? And I think probably first better to describe what that is, and then go into it.
I've always considered myself to be entrepreneurial, but I've never found an outlet for that desire. I've never found an idea or taken the leap of faith into running my own business. It's just never happened. I've always been employed. I've always worked for a company, but I don't think that should inhibit one's entrepreneurial skills in any way, shape or form. So I call it intrapreneurialism. It is basically taking all of that gut feel, that thinking outside the square box, that creativity, and applying it to the organization that you have committed yourself to. And I feel quite strongly about that. I'm quite a loyal person, and I really believe in putting your all behind what it is that you've decided to do at that particular time. And right here, right now, that is the growth and evolution of Linnworks for the betterment of our customers across the globe.
Yep. Well, I think from an entrepreneur's point of view, I've launched businesses, and that's tough to get a business off the ground, but also it's equally tough to get up the greasy pole in the corporate ladder, shall we say, and fight your way to the top. I mean, is that what helped get you up to where you are then? This entrepreneurial spirit?
Oh, definitely. I've had it my entire life. I've always been the one that put their hand up for the special project at work, who kind of set themselves apart by being a little bit pushy, dare I say, but
Yep.
At the end of the day, if you're not pushing hard enough, you're probably not getting things done. And I look back and it's, I wouldn't do anything differently, quite honestly. And I'm quite proud of some of the decisions and pivots that I've made through time. But the most important thing for anybody who is clambering up the ladder in any way, shape or form is be present. Be present and make yourself available and do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it.
Yeah, that's such an interesting point. I mean, I've heard, I've heard quite a few people, probably 2 or 3 times, honestly, in the last maybe 2-3 months, say exactly that, which is if you're just getting started, the most important thing you can do is put your hand up, right, for things. And even if you won't fully understand what you're even getting yourself into, any of that sort of stuff, but you kind of just back yourself to figure it out and develop new skills in that, and it just counts for a lot. And I've been maybe not at this point in my career, but so I'm a little bit more on the other side. But if there are people putting up their hands to help me with ad hoc things or whatever it is, I mean, it's one of the most important things I think you can do if you're starting out.
And one of the things I love more than anything about being at this stage in my career is building a team and encouraging entrepreneurialism in them. And I love to find that bright, ambitious, nascent, green individual who just wants to learn and be a sponge and get out ahead and figure things out. Because actually, they help me increase my capacity, and I'm helping them by building their career. It's a real joy as a leader being able to offer that.
100%. I mean, it's one of our values on the podcast, and also Optimizons is be curious, really, as well. So, I mean, 100% is encouraging those people around you to build and learn and be that sponge, like you say, and you learn as well,
Yeah, but doesn't it surprise you how few people are curious? It drives me insane.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, there's a large parts of ways of doing things or thinking have just become so homogenized, and it's actually harder to be curious. 100%.
I mean, it takes us nicely to our next discussion point, really, about the wider macroeconomic environment for e-commerce at the moment. What trends are you seeing? What pain points are you seeing with customers, or anything that you're curious about at the moment?
I mean, we talked about looking back and not making any different decisions, but I mean, I sometimes wonder if anybody would choose to go into retail at the moment, because it's a tough old world. It's constantly changing. They've been through multiple revolutions over the last few years. And if you've survived those revolutions, then you're doing an amazing job. I think there are so many headwinds at the moment. I mean, the economic climate is really not one of strength for the retail community. Consumer spending is massively down. Consumers are really, really stretched to within an inch of their life. So price has become a huge priority for them. And that's not always ideal for the retail community. Supply chain challenges have really, really hit hard in terms of getting raw materials to the right place at the right time, but also in terms
ever since COVID.
Yep, in terms of timely delivery and, natural disasters or unnatural disasters that occur, war, famine, fire, flood,
Well, we've had it all.
bridges falling down. It's like every day you wake up, there's something else they have to cope with. But at the same time, they're living in technology fantasy land where it's like this huge candy shop of technology to help them at the front end with their sales initiatives, in the middle with their operations, at the back end with their fulfillment and shipment. Technology, it's just so beatific what technology can do for the retail community today to cut their costs and create those efficiencies, but also to increase their revenue potential. It's like a double whammy opportunity for them. And by heck, they need it at the moment.
And another thing, let alone all the AI and technology goodies that a retailer could be focusing on, is another marketplace pops up. I mean, Tesco's in the UK most recently, BQ, Range, so and so. So, when's the right time and how should brands really approach this candy shop with marketplaces as well? Where do you start?
Well, it's a really interesting one because let's face it, whether it's their own website or whether it's a marketplace or more than one marketplace, this is a really complicated spectrum to be in. And I think there's an awful lot of retailers out there who tackle marketplaces without sufficient knowledge to be able to get the most out of them, and actually could potentially be putting their businesses at risk if they haven't figured out the if, but, whens and maybes. So I'm actually...
Sorry to interrupt there, but how many of them would you say are aware that they don't know? They don't know what they don't know, or they do know what they don't know?
It's that classic conundrum, Rael, isn't it? That whole in-source, outsource. As a marketeer, I am very pragmatic about that which I know, and therefore I'm going to do it myself. Agency, go away. Or that which I'm really not that proficient at, agency, come here and help me. But I do think I can't answer that question. I don't know if retailers are aware enough of when they need to come to an agency and when they are okay to go it alone or to use the account manager of the marketplace. But we have certainly encouraged a lot of customers who we're encouraging to grow and embrace new marketplaces. We do suggest that they at least get an introductory session via somebody who has expertise. The marketplaces are complex places to be, but get them right. They bring you huge swathes of customer potential through their brand reach and also through their operational excellence. And it's those two things that can really, really slam dunk those retail stores home if you can find the customer and then if you can satisfy the customer. And the marketplaces manage to do that very beautifully when you get it right.
So if I'm a brand, I mean, how do I know, I guess, when I've sort of saturated a marketplace or a particular channel, right? Because if you're pitching expanding into other marketplaces, I could say, I still think there's some way to go on this existing channel or this existing marketplace, or why don't we just release a few more variations or different products? And, we know this channel particularly well. Let's double down on it. And I just think some of those conversations around, well, it's worth taking a risk on a new channel. I'm just interested have you been part of those conversations, or what would you say to that?
Yeah, so we absolutely encourage and recommend diversification across marketplaces. And we also have a saying at Linnworks that not all marketplaces are created equal. Some of them are domestically focused. Others can bring you the international stage. Some are generic, all things to all people. Let's not mention the behemoth in the room, Amazon. I mean, they are all things to all people, but others are very specialist. So, in the home and garden space, you'd be kind of crazy not to be on B&Q, because that's really going to pack a punch in terms of the specific customer profile that you're going after. So we absolutely believe in diversification, but one should only diversify, one should only embrace these additional marketplaces if you've got the infrastructure in place to juggle your stock across those different platforms, and the knowledge to ensure that you're maximizing the algorithms and the placements and the product positioning. And that's kind of where you and I come in this partnership is, you're there to advise and guide and ensure that they are getting that profile right. And we're there to make sure that they've connected the dots behind the scenes and they've got that stock sync in place and they can actually fulfill these orders. Match made in heaven. But you mentioned saturation on a marketplace, and this is where we go back to this macro environment. Today's saturation could be tomorrow's opportunity, because those marketplaces are changing and evolving all of the time with regards to their own positioning, reach, brand, markets, etc. So where you might feel that you've hit the glass ceiling today, a change might be forthcoming a week down the road that then opens up a whole plethora of opportunity for you.
Yeah, you think as when you're adding additional channels that they've all got their own reach and also strength, and different buying profiles. I mean, like eBay versus B&Q versus Amazon. You do have different customers. And I think the challenge is when you're looking at setting new targets for each of the channels is, okay, where as a brand can I have incremental growth? How can I manage promotions off all these different channels? Because you've got and retailers bobbing in like Holland & Barrett and Boots and Superdrug, as well as Amazon and everyone else. How can you differentiate your promotions to make sure that you're getting good airtime without losing the buy box on Amazon? Or how can you get that incremental growth without stealing sales? And we haven't even mentioned our own D2C channel at this point, have we? How do you differentiate all of that really without chasing yourself down to the bottom when it comes to price, for example? Because you're running a 40% promotion today on Prime Day, just for example.
Yeah. Well, and there's also that juggling act between consistency across channels so that your customer recognizes you, but also the disparities of the different channels and the way you need to slightly change your positioning to stand out on those channels. And that's a conundrum that I do not envy of anyone. And that's really where your expertise lies in helping them figure that out. But we found in the research that we've done and the customers we've spoken to that there is definitely a propensity towards marketplaces as like the first port of call online for people looking for something. But I believe in what I call the halo effect. And I believe that those marketplaces aren't always where the transaction occurs. I think quite often they are the research platform.
Correct.
And then when the consumer has found what they want, they do go for the direct-to-consumer channel to find what they consider to be the best deal back with the brand itself. Not always, but, I'm considering the strength of D2C and one's own website. There's got to be an element of that happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it very much depends on the product. Again, I'm certainly not Exhibit A with all this stuff, but I don't necessarily want a direct relationship with my, water bottle provider or something like that, right? I don't want an email every week or whatever it is from them either, kind of thing. So yeah, it's a tricky one. And I guess also you're in sort of different states depending, if you're on, I don't know, TikTok or Instagram or something like that. It's not this sort of transaction mode. And so I guess that's what you were talking to earlier around sort of adjusting around to the state someone's in or the browsing behavior. Interesting.
Well, there's the frivolous purchase versus the necessary purchase. It's the whole consumer state of mind and that whole consumer behavior thing. But there's so much.
I mean, maybe I'm just more naturally skeptical of like building a sustainable business or frivolous purchases, I guess. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, right? Maybe there are tons of these massive companies and I'm horribly wrong on that. But
so in true confession times, I feel like I do feel a little bit like I'm in a confessional here. I am the world. Exactly. Sorry, Dad. I am the world's worst, ergo best, social shopper. But when I'm
Okay, well,
having
there you go.
downtime, particularly when I've got insomnia in the middle of the night and I'm just flicking through and something crops up, PayPal it, done, Apple Pay, done.
Yeah,
And then the
yeah.
next thing you know, you've got this thing coming through your door. And I would say 50% of the time, I've been delighted with that pair of Christmas tree earrings that I purchased.
Great.
But that,
Just what you need in
but that
August.
bubble hat I ordered was really bad quality.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, well, there you go. So it sounds like I am pretty wrong on that. So there you
Yeah.
go.
I feel I have to test the market. I'm in this market. I have to test it from time to time.
Yeah, in the name of research.
Well,
that's
absolutely.
Right.
And Temu has been so good at sort of spamming us all on all the socials as well. The amount of which I didn't realize I ever needed has turned up recently. Just they're very good with the advertising there. And also I had an Amazonian one said to me about your point about a discovery and well, Google calls it the zero moment of truth, to be able to sort of work through the customer journey online. Definitely Amazon's up there. 2/3 of all customers will actually research products, reviews, and then go and buy them elsewhere. So, I think marketplaces are a really important part of the journey in the zero moment of truth. And when customers are actually discovering more, learning more about a brand, if you're not on these marketplaces, you're not at the races, basically.
So back in the days when it was just the store and the D2C online environment, we called that showrooming.
Yes.
What do we call it today?
Yes.
It involves marketplaces. We need to come up with a new term for the.
We'll put that one out for the listeners.
It's that homogenous term, omni-channel, isn't it? That sort of seems to incorporate everything, but doesn't really seem right. Some retailers do have a really good D2C offering that works very nicely with their in-store experience of QR codes and various sort of witty interactive features. But I think certainly some of the marketplaces, like you've seen Alipay, for example, join the Euro football, really pushing their offering now over in Europe. Definitely, they've really got it nailed over in China, but we're probably a little bit behind the curve here. But I think it's coming where. But then you look at Amazon Fresh have pulled back from their high street environment. So it's a lot of the marketplaces realise that if they're going to get into the physical world of retail, it's a different ball game altogether with very high costs, barriers to entry and the like. So yeah.
But like with humans in business, I think companies have to test things out, try them, and sometimes they won't work, fail fast, and move on.
Yeah.
And Amazon has been. Amazon's a little bit like the M25. Everybody hates them, but everyone loves them because actually they're really good. And they use it all the time. There isn't a day that goes past that I don't have Amazon knocking on my door. Quite frankly, it's just the way of life, and they do it really well.
Is there such a thing as too many marketplaces? Too much of a good thing?
Yeah. Well, and I guess just to augment that, at what point would you start thinking that you've almost hit diminishing returns or sort of plateauing at least? Is there something like that?
So I got introduced to a gentleman the other day who's on 18 different marketplaces, and I was quite impressed with how calm he was, because I think that must be quite a juggling. And he was very open about why he had joined each one, and he had done it in a way where he had added each one incrementally. So he didn't do it all at once. It was a kind of a gradual process. And he's constantly juggling what's working and what's not. But he is one of those rare individuals who has a very good grasp of the marketplaces and is very proficient at positioning on all of them, and has a very strong technological infrastructure underneath to make sure he can balance that appropriately. So I don't think there is too many, so long as you don't take too many for who you are as an organization. And that depends on so many things: size, proficiency, the vertical that you're in, your appetite for growth. We've come across customers who have really gone for it in terms of growth and then fallen over because they couldn't keep up. So you've got to be pragmatic about making sure that you've got all of the moving parts in place that are going to ensure that if that growth takes off, you're not going to fall over.
Yeah, I think things like stock and staff to pack the orders. If you're hit with a huge demand growth curve, how you've got to plan for it, haven't you?
and supply.
Yes.
It's all, yeah, you might have the warehouse and you might have the people to pick and pack it, but do you have the stock? And when you run out of stock, are you going to be able to get the stock in time? I mean, this is where I come back to, if you think about it for long enough, you wouldn't go into this industry because it's really complicated.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I'm speaking with my nozzle hat on. We deal in bits and bytes in the software world, not in the real world of atoms, as they say. So our problems are easier in that sense.
So, I mean, to that point, breaking it down, I mean, what's the ideal process of finding, launching, and optimizing a marketplace? Getting the building blocks in place, as it were.
Yeah. So, I mean, the starter for 10 is to understand the marketplace that you want to approach and get involved in, and have a modicum of understanding about who they are and what it is they're doing, because you are fundamentally going to be providing your product within their environment. So is that conducive to your brand, to your customer type, to your way of working? There has to be synergies between the marketplace and your brand in some way, shape, or form. Otherwise, you're going to just find clashes all along the way. And then you need to figure out very, very quickly whether or not the connectivity is in place to enable you to upload all of your product information to that marketplace, to sync your stock levels so that you can ensure that you don't unwittingly oversell on one platform, because that's a customer disaster waiting to happen, and that will seriously damage your reputation in the market. And this is where you guys come in, do you have the knowledge you need to finesse your presence on that marketplace? Have you got the right product descriptions, the right kind of photographs that you're uploading, the right tag categorizations? Have you embraced all that marketplace has to offer organically in terms of promotion? And then you can also look at the paid element of what that marketplace offers, but you don't want to erode your margins too much. So there's a balancing act there.
It's a great point about like the content piece, and I always liken it to when a number of brands approach our agency or my previous agency, Marketplace Amp. I liken it to like the history of a brand's packaging. It's sort of scattered across the interweb and marketplaces and Amazon, and it seems to be very inconsistent. Because every time they've launched a new product, that there's another piece of packaging out there, and it looks horrible from a brand perspective. How can a brand get on top of that for a really consistent brand experience? Good, so the packaging and everything's on point and consistent.
I don't know, but when you find out, can you let me know? Yes. Because the internet's got a whole bunch of old branding of Linnworks that I'm really not happy with.
The good old Tinterweb, yes.
It's a real challenge, and I find just stepping away from the marketplaces for a moment, go and Google yourself on Google, and you'll find and you're like, you're kidding, that was 25 years ago. Why is that still coming up? And it's the same with brands on marketplaces. The moment you put it out there, it's not going to be easy to bring it back again. I don't want to scare anyone though, guys.
Yes.
I'm certainly not Googling myself, but this is one maybe aimed at both of you actually, which is like some of those bigger decisions around, am I setting up as a sort of a wholesale relationship with the marketplace versus, like direct to consumer via that marketplace, seller or vendor as it is in the Amazon world. Or, how do you think about that? Or how do you think about actually it's these particular ASINs out of my catalog, I'm just choosing, 5 to 10 to start off with? I mean, is it the ones that are simply with like the biggest demand that you're going with? So yeah, just how do you think about those sort of decisions when launching?
I think that everyone's very clever who is able to make those decisions, because I'm not the one that has to make them, fortunately. But my advice to anybody would be there's going to be an element of trial and error. You've got to have a really, really good understanding of what it is that you're trying to achieve and what it is that you are looking to put up on those platforms. And I always say, walk before you run. Don't put your entire portfolio up there. Start small, and small incremental changes will then get you somewhere that you're going. But Rael, for me, it's definitely a case of trial and error. And, one of the things with marketplaces is there are so many different ways to interact with them. And again, we come back to that whole, in-house outsource model with regards to, are you going to be using their fulfillment services? Are you going to be managing it as a dropship relationship? Are you just going to be putting your stuff out there and then just see what happens? There are so many different ways that they can explore this, and it depends so much on the company. Do you have your own fulfillment capabilities and logistics services in-house? Are you working with a 3PL that's reliable? What are the cost ramifications of using that third party versus doing it yourself? How much margin do you have available to let go? But there's a lot of moving parts.
I think you nailed it 100% when you're looking at selection pillar, as the Amazonians call it, about what range are we going to focus on, and you get this juxtaposition with the Amazonians when you talk to your vendor manager and they'll go, actually, you should just list your whole product range, list everything you've got in your warehouse, get onto Amazon, it'll be fine. But Amazon doesn't have to deal with all that complexity you've just outlined a bit in the background. Where's the margin? What brands are introducing customers to your range? Which brands are going to drive your lifetime profit? And like you say, if you've got a manageable range, you can control that, the content, the advertising, and actually plan, stock production. More complexity in the supply chain, the more plates potentially could drop. You're spinning too many plates, I guess.
But that's where I think if you don't have the expertise as an individual, then grab the expertise from the likes of you guys, because you could make or break the difference between them losing money and making money.
Yes.
And that's a primary message that we give to people, is understand what it is that you're doing before you try and go forth and do it. We have some customers who approach us. They've got experience with the platform, and they've got experience with somebody else's platform. They know about operational efficiency. They've got all of the information that they need to make a real success of our platform. And then there are others who just scratch the surface. And those are the ones that I want to bring in for a great big cuddle and say, okay, I'm going to hook you up with these people, because they will seriously help you max out the potential of this platform so that you can seriously erode the costs that you're currently experiencing.
Yeah. Absolutely, you've got to keep turning that stock. It's good old fashioned retail, isn't it? And so I think we tend to get a manageable range, go out to not find possibilities within the marketplace, and then rationalize for profitability. Then we're launching, okay, what's really working? Let's double down on that within the range, rather than just going throw everything up and just see what sticks. Really, which some of the distributors are. I mean, they are. Hats off to them, that some of them are very good at it, and somehow they make it work. But the margins they're working on are so wafer thin that you get it wrong, you lose big time because you're pushing a lot of volume. It's just making sure that you're backing winning horses when it comes to margin, I guess.
Absolutely.
I think sort of how can automation help brands expand in these new marketplaces to the point about profitability, I guess?
Well, I mean, automation, let's face it, it's rife, and it's the name of the game at the moment if you want to achieve efficiencies. And kind of, contradicting that concept of go slow and just put a small subset up, automation can actually help you max out that listing potential. It can help you, manage decision-making associated with order fulfillment. It can do an awful lot to bring efficiency into your business. And I know that as a software company, I'm very sensitive to using the term automation, especially if that also involves AI, because people think, oh, you're trying to take my people away. And I'm not at all. I have this firm belief that automation and any kind of AI, machine learning, to aid your existing employees so that your existing employees can do what they were brought on to do in the first place, which is retail. They probably weren't brought on to be logisticians or marketplace experts. They were there to think about merchandising and which products we're going to sell, and supplier relations and all that kind of thing. So let the automation take over and make their life easier. But if a company wants to grow, you've got to bring automation in, because they'll just never keep up with the scale.
Are you able to give us, I guess, an example, whether, I don't know, listings or logistics or whatever it is? I mean, what are we talking about? What is being automated?
Sure. So one of the examples I like to use is when you consider an end-to-end order. So I always like to start with the pushing of the buy button and then thinking about the doorbell ringing at the other end with something being delivered. Any human brain can imagine and think about and work through all of the steps of one order. You might even be able to manage 2, maybe even 3. But now let's throw 10 at you. Now let's throw 50 at you. You cannot possibly, as a human being, start to think about, where is my stock? Okay, so I'm going to take a bit of stock out of there. I've got to update it on those marketplaces. Then I've got to figure out, I've got to route it from A to B. And now which shipping vendor should I be using? And, oh, hang on, and suddenly you get lost. But with automation, it happens like that. The rules engine, pre-configured, starts to make those decisions, maps things, routes things, makes sure that it's going to be there on time, communicates about it, mitigates against problems. And that's sublime operational efficiency.
Is there a decision-making example as well? So this is, like making sure that stuff gets delivered and it's accurate and on time and, all that sort of stuff. But is there sort of examples that help you make, I don't know, allocation decisions or anything like that?
Absolutely. There's all kinds of stuff and it's all configurable within the system. There's like there's a rules engine within the Linnworks platform, which enables you to update the system if you've got staffing issues somewhere down the line, or if you've had a run on a particular stock item, you can introduce like safety stock levels, that kind of thing. And it will help make decisions, but alert you along the way. So it helps with decision making, and to some small degree, it makes some decisions for you, but under your control.
And I think, well, I guess related to this whole automation piece, and we mentioned the PIM-DAM, which is a product information management system, which is central point of truth, really important for retailers. And then we've got AI coming in, and then we've got another buzzword just rumbling over the horizon, which is EU digital product passports, which just came onto my radar recently, which is basically a digital token that gives the background of all like the eco credentials of a product all the way through the manufacturing chain. It's an EU legislation piece, which sounds a nightmare from a back-end IT point of view, but surely that could have an opportunity for having a token almost associated with a product that has all the content and its history and its manufacturing links.
Absolutely.
Is that on your radar at Linnworks?
I mean, I can't speak specifically to it, but track and trace and that whole management side of things is a crucial part. So I was just talking to a customer of ours the other day who deals in performance products, gels and proteins and that kind of thing. And they have to manage an additional element of information, which is the batch number, so that when they deliver out to athletes of a professional nature, if there are any questions, drug testing, that kind of thing, they can trace it back to the batch number. So it's all linked to that same concept of track and trace, of the heritage and the credibility of the source product. So that kind of thing is all evolving within our product to cater to the different things. I mean, anything in the pharmaceutical industry, you have to be able to track and trace. You've also got sort of the security of higher value goods as well that you also have to think about, and that kind of lot numbers and things.
Yeah, I think it could be. I mean, crypto tokens and NFTs and all that sort of thing. It was once a buzzword, that was like really, really big, and I think everyone's regretting buying an ape token art.
Just you, Matt. Just you.
No, I didn't know. Moving swiftly on, I do think that kind of technology could actually have a really good fit, because if you've got that token that fits with a product that you could plug it into, there'd be someone like Rael with a far bigger brain than I have to work out how it would work. But I could see that way of being able to have like the next generation of a barcode fitting with a system like Linnworks could be super powerful, I think.
So I think you're touching on 2 areas here that personally I think are here to stay and are just going to get more and more intense as time goes by. The first is the whole sustainability piece.
Absolutely, yeah.
I know at the moment it is more of a beauty aid than it is anything that's hardcore, but it's going to become more and more important for customers to make sustainable decisions when they're buying, but also for sellers when they're selling. And that's where, the Amazons of the world have to be careful, because this whole packaging, onerous packaging, or, multiple deliveries,
Climate pledge friendly,
multiple deliveries for one item. But also the Temus and the Sheins have to watch out, because, consumers actually don't want to be bringing stuff in from China because they're thinking about the knock-on effect on the environment and stuff. So sustainability, it's not going to go away. It's going to become more and more hardcore. So that digital token to be able to track the heritage, I think, has got mileage. But on top of that, you mentioned barcodes and QR codes and NFC tags and RFID and all of this.
yes.
That's not gone away. It's not going to go away. It's still finding its place, and this whole new, phenomenally small, minute RFID sewn into the t-shirt or into the handbag, is coming back. And that in itself is powerful, not only from a track and trace, but also from a stock management perspective.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's huge. But so those two bits I totally believe in. But think about all of the noisy bits of technology we've had to navigate over the last 20 years.
Yes.
That just came in and everyone was like super excited. It's going to change the world. And actually, when was the last time you spoke about beacons in a store?
Well, yeah, exactly,
Oh, wow.
exactly.
That was a good one.
Absolutely.
Wow.
I mean, Rael and I, on previous podcasts, we talked about my journey with Facebook. I mean, back in the day, I feel old, back in 2012, when Facebook first came out, it was going to change the world and make it a better place. And now it brought us Donald Trump. Anyway, moving swiftly on. But, it's funny how technology ebbs and flows, isn't it? And definitely, I think there's a real need. On a serious note, from like the climate, I heard on the radio today about this phenomenon of climate trauma. There's a lot of Gen Z younger people that actually have a lot of anxiety and having mental health problems, worried about the environment and, what's happening with the weather and all those sort of things. So I think as we get more and more amazing sort of floods in Spain that we've had recently, for example, more and more of these weather events, I think it's only beginning to get more and more front and center of a consumer's buying choice. Is this the right thing for the environment? It's going to be more and more important. So I think absolutely it's got some mileage, hasn't it?
But for us old timers, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to put myself in the same category.
I'll
but
never grow
I
up.
said we're around about the same. The world is so noisy today, and there's information overload, and I can't help but think. So I've got 3 children who fit into the Gen Z category, and I don't want to mollycoddle them in any way, shape or form, but by the same token, I want to give them some perspective on what they're experiencing. Yeah. Because there's 100%. Just so much out there with social, with the weather, with the climate stuff, with politics. I mean, I can't believe I just mentioned politics on this podcast. My apologies.
I started, to be fair, so you're fine.
But it's full on. Well, it's full on, like...
Yeah, absolutely. I think, let's bring it back to, what 3 things should an organisation focus on? We've got all this huge ecosystem of e-commerce. What 3 things should they focus on before they start trying to expand on marketplaces, just to give them some clarity? No pressure.
It's quite a bring back to earth.
It's like, come back down to earth. Back down to earth. Before anybody expands in any way, shape or form, make sure that you've got all your ducks in a row with what you've already got. The worst thing you can possibly do is try and expand when something is already broken in your business. So that would be the first thing. The second thing is, and this is boring and back to basics, but I stand by it. It's not just about technology. It's about technology, people, and process. And those 3 go together.
Yeah.
And if you try and tackle one without the other 2, you will come unstuck. You have to do the 3 in tandem. And then so you've got get your basics right. Then you've got your people, process, technology. And then the third is change management. Bottom up, top down. Because if you leave somebody behind, something will come unstuck.
Absolutely. Yeah. You've got to align expectations across the whole team, everyone going in the same direction. And all that complexity you alluded to earlier on, it's very easy to getting a mess in the muddle quickly, isn't it? If you're in a big organisation.
And what's lovely is it's actually very easy to render it to a relatively simplistic level if you get that people, process, and technology in the right balance. But it's also very easy to lose control if you don't take the appropriate steps to get there.
I'm going to ask to drill down a little bit on that, because I think that's like a really, really important point that I think it's definitely worth just like, chatting a few minutes about that. I mean, what does it mean to sort of bottom up, and how do you get people aligned? Because, humans are going to be human, which is think very different things and different sets of interests.
But we've always done it this way. We've always done it this way.
Yeah. What does good or bad look like, I guess?
Goodness me, you guys know how to ask some tough questions.
We're not going to give you an easy ride. You come on our podcast.
We talked about bottom up, top down. So I have a firm belief that you have to get top down buy-in. If you haven't got top down buy-in, then you're onto a non-starter from the beginning. So top down buy-in is the primary, and that means that you've got to have the majority of your executive team in sync and believing in what it is that you're trying to achieve as a business.
Absolutely, 100%.
The next is to start sowing the seed at the bottom of the organization so that you get some of these evangelists coming up the organization with passion, with ideas, with creativity, and with a feeling of ownership. Because this is not about the leadership team telling the organization what to do. This is about the leadership team empowering the organization to take charge of their own destiny. So you've got to do a bit of a sowing of the seed. And then you've got to whip your leadership team into shape and make sure that they're all empowering their teams, and that they're not, there is a propensity for a leader lacking in confidence to land grab information because they see it as power. And then there are those of us who are way more cavalier and just like, whoa, here's all the information you need. Now help me make it happen, kind of thing. And I do think the latter is going to be more conducive to encouraging a change environment. And I've got experience of this even at Linnworks, and I occasionally come across pockets of resistance to things that we're trying to achieve. And it's about, what's the word? It's about massaging that pocket of resistance to try and get under their skin and bring them along with you. It's not about remonstrating with them. It's not about showing them up. It's about getting them to understand and feel with you what the change could bring and the wealth that could bring. And it takes time.
Yeah, I mean, people are complex things, aren't they? I mean, you can't just turn them on and off like a computer. You've got to be able to bring them in, and some are more susceptible to change than others, like you just alluded to.
Yeah, and I think as well, like this is at Nozzle and sort of previous businesses, but often what you're aiming for is people to disagree but commit, right? And so it's fine. Like, in fact, I'd encourage you to disagree, right? Like, that's how you get to good decision making. But you do need the commitment to come with it if someone disagrees as well, right?
Interestingly, that's one of our drill down values is you might not always agree with the direction of the organization, but once we've debated it and we've agreed on the direction, you've got to let it go and you've got to get on board. Exactly. And if you can't let it go and you can't get on board, then you need to consider an alternative.
Wholeheartedly agree with that.
I think this, I was just thinking about a book, as a coffee-stained book on my desk. It's The Advantage by Patrick Lencioni, and he talks about a healthy organisation and the need for this healthy tension to people to check and balance. But if it goes too far and it gets personal and people are just not on board, what do you do at that point, like you say? But yeah, I mean, it's so important to get people on board and people to feel like they've had their say in some way, shape the direction of the business whilst keeping on that path is important.
But it's really interesting because I probably err on the side of despite the fact that I'm pushy and bold and, out there, I love conformity and placidness and people who are nice to each other.
Yes.
And I was having a discussion with somebody the other day, and he was encouraging me that, sometimes we've got to have a little bit of an argy-bargy.
Yes.
We've got to have a little bit of a debate.
A little bit of a tussle, friendly tussle.
Put it out there. And then we'll come back and we'll, and I think they're right. You do have to have those moments of confrontation almost a sanity check that you're going in the right direction.
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
you talked about the cultural differences. I have friends over in the States, and also I lived in Germany as well. And it's interesting how the Americans will front up and challenge an idea and challenge your thinking in a constructive way often. But sometimes it can be quite direct for the English people, which is,
Yeah.
excuse me, would you mind awfully just looking at this for me, you know? Whereas Americans is like, this is what that, you know, and Germans are like, what the hell is this? You know, this isn't working.
Yeah.
we need to get this sorted. So I think that's a healthy organization that can actually just go, hang on a minute, why are we doing it like this? You know, it's just, and without offending, of course. But yeah, I think, you know, I think that's something I've learned from the Americans, of having this, why not?
Yeah.
Why can't we do it this way? Attitude is you know, something the English can learn from, I think.
But I almost consider that to be a gift that my father gave me when he, you know, dragged the family over to the States twice.
Yes,
was that opportunity to learn something other than the British way. And it just helps you to then work internationally. I mean, the most challenging culture I've ever worked in was when I was spending time in Shanghai, especially as a woman, because it's a completely different dynamic. And I watched that cultural training video several times before my first business trip out there.
Right. Yeah, no, I think it's just a quick anecdote from my father went over to the States, and he was trying to set up his business several times, pitching for investment in the UK, and people going, no, we don't do it this way. No, we've never done it this way. No, the last 6 generations have done it this way. Didn't get investment, went out to States. So first pitch he went to, the guy wrote him a 6-figure check and set up a business, basically, you know, just like that there and then. So that's a difference in the cultures, isn't it? Yeah, it's the land of opportunity. Hey, why not? Let's do it, you know.
Yeah, I was going to say, bring it back to Linnworks. Can you give us the elevator pitch, please?
I can. So Linnworks is a SaaS platform. We aim our products specifically at retailers who are selling online across multiple channels. We specialize in marketplace selling, and the more the merrier. It's all about getting your product onto the marketplaces, syncing your stock across those marketplaces, orchestrating the orders from those marketplaces, connecting with the shipping companies so that we can help you with fulfillment. And if you have a warehouse, we've also got that warehouse management piece in there so that the physical flow of goods is also managed on the same data platform with one single view of the truth.
Love it.
And what I really like about Linnworks is like the volume. You know, if you're serious about doing volume of order, have you got like a top line stat just for the listeners to give you an idea how much product you guys shipped? Because it's a huge amount.
So there's billions of gross merchandise value going through the platform on an annual basis. So it's pretty good fun to watch the levers go up and down on the different platforms, and it won't surprise you to know that Amazon is the biggest one.
Yes.
Wow, what a surprise!
So your systems are running hot today on Prime Day, then?
They will be absolutely buzzing today on Prime Day.
You look remarkably calm for Prime Day, so yes.
Why, I'm on the marketing side, Rael. If it was Simon or Phil or John sat here, they might be looking a little... No, they wouldn't be at all. They're calm as anything.
Excellent. And just as we're coming to the end of our podcast, it's like we like to sort of chip in and what's piqued your curiosity recently, Georgia, in the world of e-commerce, and no doubt Rael and I'll chip in with what we see. But I'm interested to know what's really got your interest at the moment.
So going back to the concept of noisiness in the tech space, I've always been fascinated with augmented reality in retail, and I can't quite get my head around it. So I kind of watched on the periphery for a long time. But I kind of want to get a better understanding of the metaverse and gamification, and how do we take the next step in online retail to creating that experiential side of retail. So I've got quite a bit of a fascination around that. I must admit, being a bit of an Apple geek, I quite tempted by the Vision Pro launch that happened last week. Do I, don't I?
Rael's another Apple fanboy. You've got, I mean, look at the smile on his face.
Haven't quite got around to the Vision Pro yet, but I'm eyeing it, shall we say? Yes, it's coming.
Yeah, it's absolutely gamification. Temu, we mentioned earlier on that's got quite a nice gamification piece within its retail and like the world of gaming as well. People gaming for crypto. You know, there's all sorts of that's probably another whole podcast in itself, isn't it? Really. Rael, what's piqued your curiosity recently?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm going for a, I guess, non-tech, non-data thing, which is simply Nike coming back to Amazon, right? I mean, that's a thing. Yeah, so Nike is officially rejoining Amazon. I don't know the details of that, but they famously pulled out years ago.
Yeah.
Focused on D2C, and the D2C business hasn't been doing particularly well, and there's a lot of pressure to sort of change things up. And
it was affecting the share price as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, big time. So I can just imagine the Amazon folks, basically saying, yeah, they always come back.
So when was I missed that announcement.
Yeah, last week. I think last week, something like that. Yeah. So
I'm going to have to change my presentation because I actually used their pulling out of Amazon in a presentation recently. So I must take note.
There you go. Check it out.
Yeah, it's we've got Daniel Walsh in our team, who's ex-Amazon and ex-Nike. So perhaps we'll probably bring him on.
Because, there you go.
Yeah. As I understand this, then he's the expert clearly. But as I understand the story, it was like Nike was like, no, we're not going to go and play with you, Amazon. We're far too fashionable to be on Amazon. And now it's sort of it's one of those decisions which is coming back to bite the brand really. And tail between the legs, go back to Amazon because you've got to be there. But I think what Daniel will really bring into it's like the world of fashion is if you're selling on Amazon seasonal products which are there for a few months and then you discontinue, just don't really work with the flywheel. It's counterintuitive, isn't it, with rank? So looking at
good point.
How Nike can actually have say an accessories range, which is an evergreen range of products and selling on Amazon, I think that's going to be the key to do it. So I think needs a considered strategy, but certainly that again, because I think the biggest thing that's hurting Nike is the lack of awareness. That marketing element of marketplaces of not being on the platform, just to be front of mind, and even if they're doing DSP or Amazon advertising or whatever it is, just to keep that awareness up against other, because it's a cult brand, isn't it, really?
But also a key word for any of these retailers is agility, and they have got to be so agile to navigate the different, ebb and flow of things that are happening. And one retailer I'm always super impressed by is Argos, who, it's like they go out of Vogue and then back into Vogue just by, changing the way they operate. It's fascinating to watch some of these traditional retailers that we all remember of old, growing or not, as the case may be.
But what I've been digging into is looking around that profitability piece about how can we rank efficiently on Amazon to drive that organic rank, because that's higher organic rank, that's where your profitability is, and using like the product opportunity explorer to look at which keywords we should be ranking for, how many sales should we be making on those terms, and really sort of digging into that to get a system in place so it can rank really quickly and efficiently on the right keywords that are relevant for products. So it's quite perhaps we could go into a bit more depth on an SEO podcast in the future, but I think it's definitely an area that we've got to sort of, as an agency and brands, have got to get more and more efficient at identifying those keywords and ranking really quickly so they're profitable for a lifetime on Amazon or eBay or wherever, really.
Yeah, it's funny with the Amazon dashboards, like the first version is kind of like 90% of the data you need to put together a coherent story, but some crucial stuff's kind of still missing, or at least you don't know how they're calculating it or the definition or whatever it is. So you got to play around, but it's a fun time trying to figure all that stuff out. I've spent many an hour trying to do that.
So how earlier on I said that as a marketeer, I know where my strengths lie and my weaknesses.
Yes.
I use an agency for all that kind of thing because it's not my area of expertise. So my advice to anyone who's listening is know where your strengths lie And if you get confused on that bit,
Yes.
all these guys.
That's right.
Absolutely. And listeners, guys, this is not just, don't just listen to us, get involved. Feel free to use the hashtag eCom Insights on LinkedIn or socials or TikTok. We're on most of the social media and Tinterweb, aren't we, Rael? So wherever you're looking, whether it's on YouTube or Spotify, do remember to subscribe, click that bell, and so you never miss any future episodes, because we'll be drilling down into a lot of these topics we've touched today. So don't miss out. Yep,
Georgia, it's been fantastic having you. We've covered a lot of ground in a lot of different spaces, and it's just brilliant to talk to someone who's knowledgeable in multiple areas. So thank you so much.
Well, I've had a blast. It's been like meeting up with a couple of old mates, quite frankly.
Absolutely. Well, if you've got any questions for us or Georgia at Linnworks, do feel free to get in touch or write us an email at ecom #insights@optimizons.co.uk. Fire on those questions and we'll get back to you as well. But thanks for listening, guys. And thank you so much, Georgia. Appreciate taking time out on Prime Day to talk to us.
You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Okay. Thanks a lot for listening, guys. And until next time, keep thriving in the world of e-commerce.